it's about music, you know, and true, chamber music ended up being the bread and butter of my all these things along the way.
Oh wow, that's
Crazy.
That's really
That's
long.
yeah. So yeah. Just keep your mind open to. Okay, well, let's see. I play in the Orion String Quartet. I've been a member of the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra for, I think, 38 years. And these days I've been teaching a lot at Rutgers University, which has its music school called the Mason Gross School of the Arts, at the Manhattan School of Music, Mannes College, Bard College, and also I've been a visiting chamber music faculty at Cleveland Institute. Yeah. Well, actually, I had the last place that I was in school was actually in Europe, in Salzburg, Austria, at the Mozarteum. And when I decided to come back to New York, I did know a number of musicians already from either my own, you know, schooling, but also people that I had already met at different festivals and so on. And yeah, I didn't really have much happening at the time, but luckily I knew Marcy Rosen, the cellist, who is on the faculty at Queens College and Mannes College now. But in those days, neither of us were teaching, but she used to be a member of Orpheus. So I called her up. I said, "Hey, Marcy, you know, do you need any subs for Orpheus?" And it's always been with that group that each a set of concerts often needs perhaps a few extra people because the members are otherwise engaged doing something else. They always have a varied career as members of the group. So she said, "Well, sure, I'll tell them and see what happens." You know, and so they got me to play a few things during that season, and then they asked me to be a member, which, you know, was a very fortunate thing because they don't always have vacancies. You know, sometimes we can go for 6 or 8 years with no vacancies, but a lot of people are sort of what we call our regular subs. So it was good timing for me, and that gave me kind of a little bit of a base as far as, you know, having something to rely on. But then other things sort of in little bits and pieces, you know. I went to the Marlborough Music Festival, and they have a touring program, so they selected me to do that, and just a lot of kind of ad hoc stuff. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, mostly chamber music, chamber orchestra things, but I did some movie dates and commercials also. And so, which is these days, unfortunately, a little bit rare in New York because the New York Musicians Union, you know, it's pretty tough, which is great, but it makes it very expensive to record stuff in New York. So the last thing I did was a movie called True Grit, which was a remake of an old John Wayne movie, I think. And this was, I forget how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And you know, you play these dates, and you know, the whole process is actually kind of fascinating. because of course, you're in this studio and everyone's got the headphones on, and the trick is you have one headphone on your ear and the other one off, so you can still hear yourself play. But they have this click track, which gives you the exact way to be playing, because the composer has timed all their music with the film, and they figured it all out, and they figured out the click track, and sometimes it slows down, this kind of thing. And so it's all been worked out, but usually the composer of the film music is there to conduct anyway. And then he has in front of his stand, he also has a video monitor. So for that movie, I was playing concertmaster, so I was quite close, so I could see the video as we were playing. And also as concertmaster, when you would do takes, usually the composer would come back into the booth, and a few key people from the orchestra. So I got to come into the booth, and the directors of this film were the Coen brothers.
Oh wow!
Who have made all kinds of wonderful films. And so just one of them was there. I forget which one. I'm sorry, but so I got to meet him, and he was really great. He knew what he wanted, but he was so respectful, and what was great about them also was that they insisted on recording the music in New York, because everybody would either do it in LA, and if you really needed it to be cheaper, you would go over to London, actually. So how many of the big movies are recorded with the London Symphony, because their union they don't have such a tough union, so actually it's cheaper. So, but they're a first class orchestra, of course. So all the John Williams stuff, that's all done in London. Yeah. So anyway, that was something different, a very different experience altogether, but very interesting, actually. Throughout my studies, I always played chamber music. I always played quartet, when I was a teenager. In fact, my father, who was my first teacher, played in the Pittsburgh Symphony, and he always had a quartet called the Phillips String Quartet. And both my brother and my brother is Daniel Phillips, and he's 7 years older than me. So when each of us was a teenager, he had us play in his group, and the other people in the group were members of the symphony. So I'm this 13-year-old, 13, 14, 15, and playing with these professionals, and what a great experience for me. And I went to the Meadowmount School of Music in the summertime, and they always had a fabulous chamber music program. Joseph Gingold used to coach chamber music there, and so all these things along the way as I was pursuing my violin playing and perhaps maybe a solo career, I didn't know. It was always sort of hand in hand with chamber music. So it wasn't really something I decided, okay, I'm going to be a specialist,
Sure. Cool.
And, I entered some competitions as a soloist, and I won this or that little thing or whatever. And throughout these number of decades that I've been playing, some solo things come up, and I'm happy to do them. So, but it's true, chamber music ended up being the bread and butter of my career. But you see what I mean? It wasn't really exactly okay, now I'm only this. And it's nice for people to always have that attitude. Always keep your mind open to whatever comes up. Whether I know people that are in orchestras and they're playing chamber music together and giving recitals, solo recitals, and keeping yourself active and busy and teaching. So it's always seemed like a beneficial thing, not only for your own career, but also for as a person, to always keep yourself kind of open to many different possibilities. Well, we started, I guess I'd been out of school for about 5 years or so. And, growing up, my brother and I played together, wasn't it cute, the two brothers, yeah. but it's, it's a big age difference when you're young, right? Like I'm 10 and he's 17. I mean, that's different. But when I was in college and a little bit mostly after I was in college, we started to play in some of the same festivals together as just colleagues. They just hired me also. And, we always knew we liked playing together, but we decided, well, hey, maybe we should really do something, and both of us had always felt, that the string quartet repertoire was so special and so attractive that, it's hard to resist. So we said, well, why don't we just, start a quartet? And so just little by little, I mean, my brother knew Timothy Eddy really well from, again, a lot of these festivals that both played in for quite a few years. And so we got him roped in. And finally, we actually had a different violist to start. Her name was Catherine Metz for the first few years. And then Stephen Tenenbaum joined the group, who's also somebody that I'd played with a lot. And Steve and Tim were actually in the Gallimere String Quartet, which was a quartet that was in residence at the Mannes College. The first violinist was Felix Gallimere, who was one of our great mentors, and wonderful musician, and what history and of music making, and just really one of the most dear people that we all knew and studied with, and so they were in his quartet together already. And so as that was kind of making its way, Felix was pretty old. So Steve joined our group, and he's been with us for, well, a long time.
Okay. So you guys have been together for so long. I imagine once in a while you must have some disagreements. So how do you guys handle that when it arises?
Well, coming together in any group, whether it's, not a permanent group, or it is a permanent group, you have to come with an attitude of respect for one another. And I guess every group has to set its own ground rules. And in our group, you couldn't go too low. You couldn't get,
Sure.
That was sort of the, without really talking about it, I think we'd all felt like, it's not good just to tell everybody, oh, you sound terrible. Some groups are like that, and they're okay. They're like, yeah, well, that's just the way we are. It's fine. But that doesn't go in our group. But yeah, of course, we have disagreements. But the main thing is that, one tries to give the benefit of the doubt to your colleague that, of course, they have a reason for saying what they're saying. It's not,
For sure.
It's not arbitrary. So even if you disagree, you have to try to come to some understanding of their viewpoints. And it's not always compromise, really. But I always found it very interesting that if, there are two kind of strong opinions about something, and okay, so you have to try both things and you have to consider both things, and then sometimes something comes out of it that's something that neither of you thought of before, which doesn't mean it's a compromise, but you take elements of this and elements of that, like any interpretation of music. You don't, okay, this is the way it goes, now I don't have to think about it anymore. Of course, you're always developing. So even if it goes really against your grain, so, no, it's too fast, or no, it's too slow, or whatever it is, there's something about being asked to expand your way of feeling or thinking of things, and it influences you. You know, I've heard stories about other groups. I think there's one of the old Juilliard Quartet, of which there aren't any current members anymore. Now they're all newer. But, you know, a long time ago, they were having an argument, and it's like, okay, well, tonight we try it your way, and then tomorrow night we try it my way.
Oh, okay.
And we don't say anything until we're done. And so after the second night, they came to each other, and each of them said to the other, "Oh, I liked your way better than mine."
That's great.
You know, because I think it's exactly that. Like, if you're a good musician, you open your mind to something. You think, well, actually, yeah, that could be, you know. And
Right,
probably
right.
what they ended up with wasn't exactly one or the other, but it incorporates things. So you try to have that kind of attitude. And the other thing about resolving arguments, you know, it makes such a huge difference to have a sense of humor.
Definitely.
I can't tell you how much how important that is, you know, and try not to take things too personally. And of course, it depends on the way things are said. But, you know, come on, you're playing something, you're playing your heart out, and someone goes, yeah, but, you know, and so you have to take it and not feel like you're being attacked as a person, you know. You realize, okay, this is just an opinion about music, you know, and but then being able to have a sense of humor about things, and not that everything has to be all jokes all the time, but, you know, it helps to have a sense of humor, which gives you a sense of optimism. And it helps, you know. And then the other thing about being in a quartet for so many years is you stay away from each other as much as you can. You know, because everyone, you know, the Guarneri Quartet was famous for not socializing or being together, or saying, well, when they check into a hotel, which is what we do too, you ask for rooms as far apart as possible.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, you're together so much that you don't, you know, sometimes the walls are thin, you know, you certainly don't want to hear your colleague practicing. And you don't want to hear them on the phone. You don't want to know that they're coming in. You know, you just want your own space, because then when you're together, we spend a lot of time together. So it's healthy. So it's not, you know, so people would assume, you don't like each other, you know. No, actually, that's why the Guarneri Quartet was together for the same people 45 years. You know, and only at the end, when David Sawyer, he just retired because he was, you know, old. But it wasn't for any other reason than that, you know. And they survived because they knew how to preserve themselves. And I think in any group, there's sometimes some people hang out together more than others. And of course, I'm in a group with, you know, my brother, so I've known him a long time. Yeah, well, certainly, I think for everybody, it's, you know, for most of us that perform a lot, you always feel like you have this thing you have to get ready for, and now it's just not there, so the motivation is really much less. You know, I'm lucky at this point in my life, you know, I'm doing a lot of teaching, and that's been actually going on continuously, because one can teach pretty well over the internet. You know, it's not perfect, but it's among the better things.
Yeah.
You can still get work done. That's valuable. So being able to focus on that has been a good thing, because that keeps things going, you know. On the other hand, I've also enjoyed just spending time at home with my family. We have a nice garden in the back, and for the first summer, and I don't know, we've been in this house for 16 years. For the first time, we've actually been able to take care of the garden in the summertime. So it actually looks good and it's not run over with weeds and everything else. It actually looks nice still. I did some home renovations myself. It was a lot of work, but it was fun. And so just kind of doing these home things has been nice and gives you, again, a little bit of a focus away from realizing, oh, there's no concerts, but I'm at a different point in my life than let's say you two, right? And my heart goes out to everybody who's starting their careers, because it's just you're just ready to do all these things, and then it's like, nope, wait, there's
Yeah.
but so what the two of you have done with your online concert series, right? That's been something that gives you something to work towards,
Right.
and engaging. And a lot of people have done that. I think at this point, some people are, it's tiring, and people are wanting to get back to real life, and it's hard to wait. So people are coming up with creative solutions, as we all know, with playing outdoor concerts or limited audiences and making sure there's ventilation, and luckily some of the venues themselves are cooperating with that sort of thing. So but it's incredibly frustrating for everybody, but I think especially for people that are starting out or even in the middle of their career, and they, let's say, aren't teaching, to sort of take up some of the balance. But a lot of people are teaching a lot more now, and I think for any musician, that's an important part of our job, is to pass on what we know, and to help people play instruments, whether it's, and it doesn't have to be, at the most high-powered, level, but getting people interested in playing an instrument. It's so good for kids. It's so good for anybody at all different levels, and particularly with the music programs in schools being kind of mostly not very good anymore. Having all this interest from players who say, well, I guess I better try to teach more. That's a great thing. It's a great thing for music, and it's a great thing for people to be able to play. Anyway, so that's another kind of silver lining in all this mess. It's hard for people to stay optimistic, but if everyone tries to be a little bit patient and open your minds to figuring out some new ways to do things, which I think people were doing before the pandemic already. This idea that you could play, living room concerts or concerts in unusual places that aren't typically concert halls, and people love going to these things because it all feels more intimate. One doesn't often make a lot of money doing those kinds of things because it's so small, but it can be incredibly rewarding for everybody, including you as a performer, to feel that. Of course it's very different, and it can be very glamorous playing in a big hall and all that, and that's great too. But again, sort of opening your mind to many different possibilities and creating something. I mean, look, we're all kind of used to it at this point. We have students from many different places, and we're all just it's about music, and not to be too worried about it, not to be too worried. Oh, did I say the right thing, or this or that? I mean, just be honest, be straightforward, and it doesn't matter if your English isn't good. It really doesn't matter. The only thing is to get into schools They have, it's the famous TOEFL score, right? So my advice would be to get some help studying just for this one exam. I always found it very odd. I've never seen a TOEFL exam, but I hear that it's rather odd that they ask weird questions. And
it's really hard. Chloe was showing me some of the questions. I
yeah,
didn't know.
right?
I was getting confused. Yeah.
Exactly. So to get coached and helped or tutored in how to take the test. It's not really what you know. It's not really your English. I've had students that got a good TOEFL score and I could barely communicate with them. And then other people that had a very low score, it sounded like they've been living here for years. So a lot of it is taking that darn test. So that would be my advice is, get some help for the test so that then you have your, you don't have that obstacle. So, well, this person plays the violin beautifully. We really want them in the school. Oh, but the TOEFL score is too low. And this happened a lot. And each school, of course, has a different acceptable score. So you need to find out what that score is as you're applying. Because as far as violin teachers or music teachers go, just for your instrument, we don't care how your English is. It really doesn't matter at all. It's all about the music. It's all about playing, and we each get our points across eventually. Sometimes it takes a little time, and everybody that's come over who's struggled with English, it always gets better, and it's really fine. I teach at Rutgers, and all my students are DMA students, and they have to write papers and give a lecture recital. And I'd say 99% of my students have been Asian, and most of them not from this country. Some of them were born here, but mostly not. And everyone manages eventually, even if they haven't been in college and undergrad or master's even, because everybody's here to help. And that's really the bottom line. The teachers are here to help. And so just to be able to be accepted just on your playing and not have the TOEFL thing, getting in your way. So whatever people can do to, get some guidance with that, I would say would be a very important thing. And then the rest of it about communicating, just communicate. Doesn't matter. It's all good. Well, things are like with everybody, pretty much everything's on hold, but there are different organizations that are trying to get a few things started. And with my quartet, we are in discussion with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center of doing a live streaming concert from their small studio called the Rose Studio, where there will be no audience, but it'll be a concert, two pieces, so not a full-length concert, but about an hour. And they are putting together a series, as far as I know. I think it's not going to be happening until after January. But we're talking about doing that. And so we said, okay, but what about the ventilation? And what about, all the precautions? And so they've been very thorough in figuring out what it is they need to do to keep things as safe as they can. And I know that from my quartet colleagues, everyone's pretty much not going anywhere particularly, except for their few little places they go and staying pretty conservative. So we're not too worried about each other, but we'll still be wearing masks. And Orpheus has started an outdoor series for the fall. So just I guess it was the middle of September, just a little while ago. They played their first outdoor concert. unfortunately, apparently the weather was particularly cold for September. Usually it's not so cold,
Right.
but they were out and they had some portable heaters that they were using. So, you know, people are trying to do. So anyway, for us, for me, that's one of the few things that I'm planning on, and the rest of it is just kind of waiting and until things are a little more normal. But meantime, I'm teaching a lot.
So thank you for your time today, and that it was really great conversation, having a conversation with you.
My pleasure. It's good to see you both.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.